All right, Trade Pros, we are live for today's midday update on October the 28th, 2019. This is Mark coming at you guys from our headquarters here in Toronto, Ontario on this lovely Monday or afternoon. So, welcome to today's session, guys. For those that are new, welcome. For those that are returning viewers, welcome back. If you guys are new, please do us a big favor and go ahead and smash that like button as we go ahead and get started here. Also, if you do like what we do chat on here, please do go ahead and subscribe and check off that notification bell so you get updated anytime that we do jump on YouTube here. And that is basically it. So let's go ahead and get started with today's session. Georgie covered some of the overnight drivers, and I'm going to look at some of the news that came through this morning. Not too much as far as economic data during the U.S. session. Really, the only thing that came through was the Dallas Fed manufacturing survey at 10:30, and that came in. How did we come in? Business index that came in at minus 5.1 versus 1.5 previous, so big miss on that front. Also had global equity news. U.S. President Trump states that U.S. plans to cooperate with like-minded nations to promote security on worldwide 5G networks. That's according to a letter. And that is really all that we saw. President Trump at 9:42 acknowledges that the S&P 500 hit all-time highs, adds that this is a big win for jobs, 401ks, and frankly everyone. Our country is doing great. Even killed long-saw ISIS murderer al-Baghdadi. We are stronger than ever before. So Trump playing up. Awesome, Will. Happy to hear that. So Trump playing up um, the weekend's news about the killing of ISIS leader al-Baghdadi, and also mentioning that S&P 500 is at all-time highs. And you guys know he's been very vocal about the stock market since he got elected in 2016. A lot of his party's, I wouldn't say platform, but a lot of the party's goals have been based on the stock market performance. A lot of the policies have been with regards to that. So not too surprising to see all-time highs here. I do have an interesting chart to show you guys just because today's data was so limited. That was really all that we had. All right, so that's all that we had on the session, and that's all that's really excuse me, scheduled for the remainder of the session. Nothing really until we see consumer confidence numbers out of the States tomorrow at 10 a.m. All right, so as far as economic agenda, that was basically it for today's session. What I do have is an interesting chart here to show you guys. This is the daily chart of the S&P 500 minis. Let me just show you guys that chart. Pull it up here for you guys if I can find my OBS. All right, so my S&P 500 chart. Here's my S&P 500 chart, and I kind of denotated or annotated rather a couple of key events that happened over this last year. So what am I looking at here? Well, looking at the last two times we've had a rate cut this year, you guys can see July 31st was the first one. We had a 25 basis point rate cut. And then again on September 18th, we had another 25 basis point rate hike or rate cut. All right, so what is interesting to note is that last time this happened, all right, so the first time this happened in July, you guys can see we had just popped above previous all-time highs. We were trading at new highs on the session. Rate cut came in, big selling came through. All right, second time around, September 18th, where were we at? Right around previous all-time highs. September 18th, 25 basis point rate cut comes through, another market sell-off. All right. October 11th, this was when the Fed announced the balance sheet expansion where they're going to be buying $60 billion worth of government securities on a monthly basis, effectively starting QE4, but not calling it that. And what did we see from the market? Well, where are we right now? Back to fresh all-time highs. And this week, again on Wednesday, we have FOMC. And I believe as of this morning, the traders here, let me just double check that note here. Fed Funds Watch. I believe I heard Victorio saying that probability here is for a 50 basis point rate cut. Let me just confirm that here quickly. Oh, wow. Okay, so the probability of at least a 25 basis point rate cut has jumped up to 94.1%. This is based off of numbers or data coming through this morning, October 28th at 10:56 Central Time. All right, so that would have been what, 11:56? That would have been about 10 minutes ago. All right, so 10 minutes ago, as of 10 minutes ago, the probability of a rate cut on Wednesday's meeting has jumped to 94.1%. From the previous October, or as of October the 21st, a week ago, those rates or the probabilities were at 89.8%. And just a month prior, they were at 49.2%. All right, so probability of rate cut has increased. And what we've seen happen last two times this has happened, we had SPOOs at all-time highs, big sell-off. SPOOs at all-time highs, big sell-off. SPOOs, where are we at? All-time highs. And we've got FOMC just around the corner with another rate cut on the agenda. So, yeah, we are at new all-time highs, but I'd be a little bit cautious looking to buy here as we have FOMC. You guys know markets don't crash from lows. Markets do, crash from highs. So we'll see what happens there. Not saying that there's going to be a crash, but just know that history has shown previous two times we've been at all-time highs and we had a rate cut. This is kind of what we've seen. So we'll see what happens from there. That being the case, each time we've had that rate cut, the sell-off has been less and less aggressive. So while I am anticipating a bit of a decline. We'll see how far that gets. If it holds above these 2900s or so, we shouldn't really continue lower as we're going to have higher lows and higher highs in play. All right. So that's what I'm watching for here on the daily chart. Let's get rid of this and let's take a look at the quote board here. All right. So as we stand, crude oil is down on the session. We're down just over 8%. Volume relatively light, only 279,000 contracts traded so far today. And we are below the previous day's close and the US pit session open. So trend on this morning session is down on crude oil, and on S&P 500, we are above the previous day close and above the open at the moment. So trend is up as it stands. Daily change percentage, not really indicative not really that indicative of today's rally, up only 0.55%, but we are far above previous day's close, and the open at the moment. So bullish as it stands. If we take a look at, actually, what's the volume? 576,000, really light volume though, guys. Again, this is likely due to the fact that we have FOMC coming out on Wednesday. A lot of traders are anticipating this report, especially because rate cuts are supposed to be coming. Based on this Fed's watch, 94% likelihood of that to happen. So relatively light volume. I don't really see this getting too big. Probably sticking around the 800 to a million contracts traded range by the end of today's session, and wouldn't be surprised to see that trading at about a million on Wednesday's session. All right, so that's what we got on that front. Let's jump onto the pivot charts here, and let's have a quick gander at what the pivots are showing. Oops. All right. I don't think I'm seeing enough days here. There we go. All right, now we can see crude a little bit better here. So if I get rid of this pivot point chart here, it's going to give us a little bit more of a longer term approach. And what you guys will see is that, based off of what we were saying yesterday, higher lows in play, did see that 55 level give out, big breakout to that side there. And we are seeing, higher lows being formed here with higher highs. So structure at the moment on the 1 hour time frame is bullish. Overall that structure is bullish. You are seeing nice higher lows and higher highs. Caveat being this last rotation here, we did try those previous highs at the 5680s and we failed. And now we've kind of sold off, breaking that previous little swing low. So shorter term structure might be shifting back to the bear side here. What would confirm that for us? Well, if we get back up, say, into those 5640s, and then the sellers step on it and press this thing back down to 5560s, we might just be getting back on to the sell side. As it stands, as long as we remain above those 5560s, That is a 60, right? Yeah, 55, 60s. We should be in good standing for the upside here. If I throw the pivots back on the chart, not really seeing too much here. We did have a bounce off of the pivot. We did retest the previous highs, didn't quite reach the R1 before sinking back under that pivot. And you guys can see we did close there. We did retest the pivot as resistance and we pressed off into that S1. All right, so pivot has held as resistance on today's session. We did get a 1 hour close below there. And the current candle is only 12 minutes into formation. We'll see if anything that pops up into those 5640s can get sold off back into that S1. S1's at 55.89. We're pretty close to it there. And your previous day low comes in at those 55.60s, which I think is the better level here. That is your previous 1 hour swing low. And I think that'll be the next target if we remain below the pivot for the remainder of today's session. All right, so jumping on to the actual tick charts here, what you guys will see is that we did open up below the overnight high here. Overnight high was 56.85. On the open, we tested that overnight high and failed off. And once we got back below the open, the bulls were in trouble. We've sold off quite aggressively below the overnight low into the 5-day point of control and into one of our trading zones here. You guys are seeing we did rotate. We're getting a bunch of rotations here. This is a big level of resistance at the current point in time. The reason why is because that is the 5-day point of control. This is where the most amount of volume occurred on the last 5 trading sessions. All right, so no surprise to be seeing this holding as resistance. If it can remain resistance, we had a nice reversal here. It's coming back up to retest that level. But if we can hold this level as resistance, we'll likely make a press back down to the value area low and then back into that previous day low, sitting down at those 55.60s. Alternatively, if we keep finding support here, you guys are seeing a lot of rotations. If the buyers can get this thing up, still don't really want to be getting long here. The trend for the short term is a little bit bearish, but if we can get back above here and ideally clear those VWAPs, I think those VWAPs are really your last line in the sand for the sellers, and they're right around that 56.40 level. All right, so if we can get back above 5-day PLC, we might see another run into here, at which point I'd be looking for it to start pressing back down. You'd want to see selling pressure come through. If there's no selling pressure and the bulls can manage a strong breakout back above that, we'll likely have our eyes set for another test of those previous day highs and the overnight highs. All right, so that's what I'm seeing on crude. On S&P 500 pivot chart, let's extend this out a little bit as well. Let's go for 120. All right. All right, so you guys can see a little bit more clearly now. We are at fresh all-time highs. Let's get rid of these pivots for a second here. All right, so we are at fresh all-time highs. Those fresh all-time highs came in at, or the previous all-time highs were at 30.29 half, 30.29.50. Okay, and you guys can see on today's overnight session, we kind of broke up above that level. There it was, nice strong breakout above those previous all-time highs, and we've had a nice continuation. Just had a little rotation down. Trend remains bullish here, all-time highs, but I would remain cautious here with the upside, given the fact that FOMC is around the corner. And I did show you guys that daily chart of the S&P 500 showing that, the last 2 times we were at all-time highs with a rate cut around the corner. We did get some aggressive selling come through on the S&P 500. Let's get the pivots back up here, see where we're at on today's session. Holding R2 as resistance. All right, so we've actually tested R2. That one was at the 42s. That's a big level we were looking for during the morning session, and we've held that, forced a nice rotation, and we're kind of stuck above the open at the moment, and the overnight high, the opening range low, and the R1 actually comes in at 30.31. So R1 on the chart, somewhere around here, 30.31s, with everything else a little bit higher. So there's a bunch of support here. You guys can see we've rotated down, come back up, rotated back to the view app, and we are finding some buying coming in. So we could see a potential move back up to all-time highs, which are currently, intra-session all-time highs for today being, here's my Sierra. All-time highs at the current session, I believe, are right around those 42s or 42 quarters. So we'll see if we can press back up there, back on up there. What I would like to see is for this rotation to close green, some nice volume coming in, and we'll see if we can potentially catch something for another run back up to those highs. Just because, it is bullish doesn't mean we're going to break the fresh highs. If you do get long somewhere down in here, look to get paid into those previous day's highs. There's no guarantee that we're going to go right through them. All right, so look to play this thing cautiously. Back into fresh highs is not the way you want to be doing it. Get paid into those previous highs, and if you've got extras, you can look to run one or two, but you always want to make sure to get paid, especially because we are pretty extended here. R2, generally R3 tends to be overbought, oversold for a session, and so we'll see where they go from here. All right, guys, so that is really what we've got on today's session as far as the analysis is concerned. The last bit of our update here is to take a quick, gander at the TradePro Performance Index. All right, so pretty good bounce back day today. On the 28th, we've got another 3 days left of October trading, and we hit almost 71% live positive on today's session. Almost 55% were up, just under 17 were flat, and just under 30% were down on today's session. So good numbers here, nice bounce back, and we look to try to set a new monthly record here. I believe our previous month high was around 69%. We're going to look to see if we can hit that 70%, close off this month on a high note into the last 2 months of 2019 and the last 2 months, guys, of this decade. Right, I said this last Friday, and it rung some bells in the office, and I'm going to repeat that today. We are in the last 2 months of 2019 of this decade, so make it count. All right. That's what I got on the TradePro Performance Index, and that is basically our report for today. We'll switch back off to myself here, and we can sign this off. Just before I do sign off, I'll just say hello to everybody in here. Chris, good to see you in here, brother. Will, you as well. Happy to hear that the notifications work this time around. George, good to see you in here. William as well. And Roni, good to see you in here as well, brother. So thank you guys so much for taking the time. We're going to jump off here and get some work going with the team. A lot of exciting developments happening behind the scenes. So it's really never been a better time to become a trade pro if you're not one already. Like I said, you've got 2 more months left of this decade. Make it count. Until next time, until tomorrow, you guys will see George at 9 a.m. You will see me at noon. Until then, you know the 3 rules: patience, diligence, and discipline. Good luck and good trading, guys. Take care.